New developments tonight also concerning the bat infestation at an elementary school in Refugio. Students have now been relocated to a former Catholic school while maintenance crews continue to clean up their regular school building. I'm Rudy Trevino here now with the update for us. Rudy?
Yeah, well, Joe, the batty situation at Refugio Elementary is pretty close to being cleared up. Last week, work crews began the tedious job of patching up, going above and beyond the call of duty, sealing any possible holes, cracks, and crevices to make sure the bats don't return. But they apparently didn't get the hint. Superintendent Melissa Gonzalez told us the winged mammals are a pretty determined bunch.
We felt like we had the building pretty secure. And then over this past weekend, we noticed a sudden increase in the number of bats in the building.
The district brought in an Austin-based company to follow up for the removal, again for the second time, of the bats. But this time, students had to be relocated. So with safety top of mind, the superintendent reached out to a community partner to temporarily move the elementary students. Our Lady of Refuge opened its doors.
That's something we've learned through Hurricane Harvey, that we have to rely on our community resources and our community partners to make sure that our children have everything that they need. We were just extremely grateful to Our Lady of Refuge for allowing us to have our students housed there today.
Now, Superintendent Gonzalez tells me there are maintenance crews and pest control folks doing all they can to make sure the bats find other accommodations to roost. They don't want them to go too far away, though, because come mosquito season, they'll have jobs to do. Joe?
Well, that's a touchy problem there. Rudy, thank you.